You brought shame to our American family. It was the words Michael Harrison whispered in Maria's ear, while still holding the newborn twins in the hospital. Two Asian babies who don't even look like me. What will the neighbors think? Maria de la Cruz Harrison, 28, had just passed 18 hours of labor without anesthesia because Michael forgot to sign the health insurance papers. Babies slept peacefully in their arms with delicate strokes that mixed their Philippine heritage with their father's American genes. But all Michael could see was problem. My mother is furious, he continued, taking pictures of the babies just to send to the mother-in-law with the message, now you see why I should have married someone in our own race. Maria read the message on the reflection of his cell phone screen but kept her face impassive. Each word was like a blade, but she already expected it. The Philippine nurse, Luz, who accompanied the birth, threw a look of contempt for Michael before whispering something in Tagalog in Mary's ear. Handa at ba ang lahat? He asked discreetly. Maria responded with an almost imperceptible nod, a sign that Michael interpreted as postpartum tiredness, but in fact confirmed that everything was ready for what would come next. Maria had arrived in the United States 3 years earlier, with an international administration diploma and fluency in 5 languages. He met Michael at a company party where he worked as a sales manager at Harrison & Associates, ironically, the family business he would inherit in a few years. He courted her intensely for 6 months, promising a life of dreams in America, and swearing that her family would welcome her with open arms. The first lanes of the Harrisons' true personality have already appeared in the second meeting with the family. Maria is such a exotic name, commented Margaret Harrison during a dinner, pronouncing exotic as if it were a contagious disease. Wouldn't you like to use a more American name? Like Mary, maybe? What she didn't know was that, for the Harrison family, she would always be the Philippine, an exotic trophy that lost its shine after marriage. During pregnancy, comments became increasingly cruel and explicit. I hope the kids don't leave much Oriental, said Margaret Harrison during a family dinner while cutting Peru with unnecessary violence. It would be a pity if they couldn't fit into our society. Michael never defended his wife. On the contrary, he laughed at the comments as if they were innocent jokes, and then whispered in Mary's ear, she didn't mean it maliciously. It's just her way. But Maria saw the crystal-clear evil in her mother-in-law's eyes, especially when Margaret made a point of asking about strange customs Philippines in front of important visits. 2 days after birth, the situation completely exploded. Margaret Harrison arrived at the hospital wearing her favorite skin coat and sunglasses as if going to a funeral. Michael told me about the babies, she said, without even looking at her grandchildren. I hope you understand that they will never be true, Harrison. Our lineage goes back to the founders of this city, and I won't allow it to be diluted. The word diluted came out of his mouth as a pure poison. Maria felt the blood boil, but kept a diplomatic smile. His eyes, however, shone with an intensity that Margaret erroneously interpreted as submission. Of course, Mrs. Harrison. I understand perfectly the importance of family tradition, Mary replied, perfectly articulated, with an almost imperceptible accent that made each word even more elegant. Margaret frowned, bothered by her daughter-in-law's composure. I expected tears, supplications, or at least some sign of vulnerability that confirmed its superiority. Instead, he found a woman who looked prepared. Well, said Margaret, adjusting the bag on his shoulder, at least now you have fulfilled its role. Michael can move on with his real life. What the Harrison family didn't know was that Mary had meticulously documented every racist commentary, every humiliation, every moment of disrespect in the last 2 years of marriage. Audio recordings stored on encrypted pen drive, message prints, emails saved in secret accounts, all organized in digital folders with detailed dates, schedules, and contexts. Each insult had been one more piece in the puzzles of its coming freedom. The following night, while breastfeeding the twins, Mary received a call from her sister in Manila. Even, have you already checked the documents I sent by email? Sophia asked in Tagalog. Maria smiled for the first time in days. Hindi pa, pero mamaya ko titingnan, replied, indicated, what would you check later? The conversation continued for a few minutes, always in Tagalog, discussing details that would make Michael lose sleep if he knew what it was about. Michael, who was in the hallway talking on the phone with a lawyer about divorce options without losing much money, had no idea that his wife had just confirmed the receipt of information that would completely change the power game in that marriage. Yes, I want her to sign a resignation of rights about the family business, he told the lawyer. She doesn't understand anything about business. It's just an immigrant. During the call, Maria heard Michael laugh loudly when the lawyer suggested offering a derisive amount for her goodwill in not creating problems. She will accept anything. People like her always accept, said Michael, a sound that echoed through the corridor as a statement of war he didn't know to be declaring. Light, the Philippine nurse, passed through the corridor and made eye contact with Maria through the ajar door. A small smile has formed on their lips, the kind of smile women share when they know that an arrogant man is about to learn a lesson he will never forget. As she watched her husband conspire against her a few meters away, Mary whispered to the babies in Tagalog, "Mga anak, your breast has been preparing for this moment longer than your papa could ever imagine." She gently kissed the baby's tests and added in English, "And tomorrow, everything changes for the Harrison family." What Michael and his family didn't know was that Maria was not just an ordinary immigrant seeking a better life in America. Behind that sweet smile and the respectful stance of obedient wife, she kept secrets that could not only destroy the marriage, but shake the foundations of the reputation that the Harrison valued so much in the conservative community of Westfield. Secrets that would transform the submissive Philippine into the centerpiece of a scandal that no money could drown out, and which would reveal that underestimating an intelligent woman is the most expensive mistake a man can make. If you have witnessed the moment when someone underestimates completely a person just for its origin, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because what happened after this humiliation will prove that the sweetest revenge is one that no one seeing coming from, especially when it comes from where least expected. The next day, Margaret Harrison returned to the hospital accompanied by two friends of the high society of Westfield, as if it were an excursion to observe exotic animals. "This is my daughter, in-law Filipina," introduced Maria with the same tone that she would use to talk about a furniture that doesn't match the decoration. "And these are the mixed grandchildren." The three women observed babies as quality inspectors rejecting a defective product. "Too bad, Margaret," sighed Patricia Winthrop, the mayor's wife. "They really pulled the Asian side. It will be difficult to explain this in the field club." The third woman, Catherine Mills, owner of an art gallery, shook her head in false solidarity. "At least now you know you can't trust certain people." Maria held the babies more firmly, but her expression remained serene. What these women did not know was that each poisonous word was being discreetly recorded by the cell phone that Light, the nurse, had strategically placed positioned on the bedside table. "Thanks for visiting, Mrs. Harrison," said Maria politely. "I'm sure you have important appointments." Margaret laughed sarcastically. "Important commitments, of course. Unlike some people, we have a reputation to keep in society." Before leaving, she whispered loudly enough for Mary to hear, "Michael is already looking for a lawyer. Don't be fooled thinking she will take some money from this family." After leaving the three social vipers, Luz approached Maria with a tray of medicines. "Nakita mo ba yung mga mukha nila?" he asked in Tagalog, referring to the expressions of the visitors. Maria smiled discreetly. Nakita ko." Perfect timing. The two exchanged an accomplice look. Luz had captured exactly what he needed. What Harrison didn't know was that Mary of her cruise was not just an ordinary immigrant with a university diploma. She was the daughter of Roberto de la Cruz, one of the most respected lawyers of the Philippines, specializing in international law and cases of discrimination. He grew up in a family that fought against government corruption for generations, learning as a child that documentation and patience were the most powerful weapons against injustice. During her 3 years in the United States, Mary had used her linguistic skills to work discreetly as a translator for civil rights law firms. Each case of DISGRACE it translated was a practical class on how the American legal system worked. Each testimony of racism victim was a strategy manual on how to build solid cases against arrogant oppressors. Michael returned to the hospital that afternoon with more detailed divorce papers and an air of annoying superiority. "Maria, you need to understand your situation," he said, sitting in the distant chair as possible from babies. "You are an immigrant without money, without a family here, without connections. I am offering a generous deal. You signs these papers, stay with the children, and get $5,000 to start your new life." Maria pretended to read the documents carefully, but in reality she was watching Michael through the eyelashes. He typed frantically on his cell phone, probably sending Julia messages about how he was solving the Asian wife's problem. $5,000, Maria repeated slowly. "For 3 years of marriage and 2 children of yours." "Exactly. It's more than you would be legally right," lied Michael blatantly. "Besides, you can't sue me. You don't know anyone, you have no money for lawyer, and who would believe you against the Harrison family?" He laughed cruelly. "You should be grateful for the proposal." At that moment, Mary realized that Michael had crossed a line that turned any remnants of love into a railway determination. "You're right about one thing, Michael," she said calmly. "I should be grateful." She signed the papers with an elegance that made him confused. "Thank you so much for showing me exactly who you really are." Michael left the hospital convinced that he had won, sending triumphant messages to Julia. Problem solved. Filipina accepted 5,000 and will not give problems. We are free to start our real life together. He didn't even realize that Mary had discreetly photographed each page before signing, nor that the documents contained clauses that he had not read right. That night, while breastfeeding the twins, Maria opened the laptop and started typing an email to her father in Manila. "Tatay, it's time to use everything you taught me," wrote in Tagalog. "I need your help for a very special case." Attached to the email, all recordings, photos, and documents collected, along with a detailed explanation of the situation. The answer arrived 2 hours later. "Anak ko, your American uncles are very interested in your case. Get ready, the war will start, but this time we have all the weapons." Maria smiled as she read, "American uncles," the family code for the influential contacts her father had grown for decades of international work. What Michael and his high society family could not see was that every racial insult, every attempt to humiliate, was feeding a much more powerful force than they thought. Mary was not just an immigrant woman fighting alone. She was the daughter of a man who had knocked down powerful, corrupt 2 continents. And now, with the signed divorce papers and all documented evidence, the real game was just starting. The Harrison thought that $5,000 and cruel words would be enough to make a submissive Philippine disappear silently. But what they didn't know was that they just aroused an international network of allies that would transform their arrogance into the greatest humility lesson Westfield has ever witnessed. 2 weeks after the signing of divorce papers, Michael Harrison organized a party at his home to celebrate his freedom with Julia and friends of high society. "I finally got rid of the Asian luggage," he joked, serving dear champagne while showing photos of the new Facebook girlfriend. "Now I can focus on what really matters, building a real American family." Julia, now officially installed at Harrison's house, posted a series of Instagram photos with the caption, "New life, new beginnings, more drama." The comments of friends congratulated their courage from saving Michael from a toxic marriage with a foreign gold digger. What they didn't know was that Mary had created false accounts on all social networks to monitor each movement, each post, every premature celebration, every photo of the party, every cruel comment, every laugh at its costs, was being meticulously documented and sent to a digital folder entitled Evidence of Character. While Michael celebrated, Maria was in her small rented apartment, not crying as he imagined, but working on her laptop until high hours. The twins slept in the makeshift crib next door as she typed in Tagalog with her father, Roberto de la Cruz, through an encrypted video call. "Anak, I received all the documents you sent," Roberto said, his decades of experience as an international lawyer shining in his eyes. "This case has the potential to establish important precedents in the American courts." On screen, Maria could see her father's impressive office in Manila, with Harvard, Yale, and Oxford diplomas decorating the walls. Roberto was not just any lawyer. He had represented victims of discrimination in international cases, worked with the UN on human rights issues, and maintained a network of contacts that extended to 3 continents. "Your American uncles are very interested in meeting Harrison," he said with a smile that Maria knew well, the smile that appeared before he destroyed arrogant opponents in the courts. "Tatay, they think $5,000 and cruel words will make me disappear," Maria replied in Tagalog. "That I am just another immigrant without resources or connections." Roberto riu, a sound that resonated with decades of experience by overthrowing powerful that underestimated the little ones. "Let me tell you about your new uncles, Anak," said Roberto, opening a digital folder on the screen. "Marcus Williams, senior partner of the largest civil rights office on the East Coast. Sarah Chen, expert on racial discrimination that has never lost a case. And David Rodriguez, who turned 5 racist families into national examples of how American justice actually works." Mary felt a wave of being able to go through her spine. It wasn't just the abandoned daughter Michael imagined. She was part of a legal dynasty that had passed generations fighting injustice and prejudice. "When do we start?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "We have started," replied Roberto. "Marcus is reviewing the evidence you have collected. Sarah is analyzing the recordings of racist statements, and David is building a case that will turn the Harrison into a case study of privilege and consequences." He paused, his gaze becoming more serious. "Anak, when we end with them, the name Harrison will be synonymous with shame in Westfield." That same night, Michael received the first track that he had completely underestimated his ex-wife. An elegant envelope was delivered to your home by a professional messenger. Inside, a letterhead in Williams, Chen, and Rodriguez, International Civil Rights Law, was a meeting to discuss pending issues related to his recent divorce. Michael laughed at the letter, showing her to Julia. "Look that, Filipina hired some cheap lawyers to scare me. as if I was to impress me with names I never heard of. He threw the letter in the trash without even noticing the office address in Manhattan, or the fact that the correspondence had been sent with diplomatic protocol. Julia posted a photo of the letter on Snapchat with the caption, "When your ex tries to scare you with fake lawyers." What she didn't know was that simple photo would become additional evidence in a process being built with the accuracy of a military operation. Margaret Harrison, when he learned of the letter, was even more discharged. "Philippines always do this kind of drama," she said during the afternoon tea with her club friends. "They think they can intimidate us with legal paperwork, as if we didn't know all the important lawyers in the region." What Margaret didn't know was that Marcus Williams had dinner with the governor the previous week, discussing exactly the kind of case he was about to accept, or that Sarah Chen had appeared on the cover of Time magazine as one of America's most influential civil rights defenders. While the Harrison laughed and underestimated, Maria ended the documentation of 2 years of psychological abuse, racial discrimination, and parental neglect. Each insult had a date, time, and context. Each cruel comment was recorded in high quality. Each attempted humiliation was photographed and catalogued with surgical accuracy. In the last video call of that week, Roberto showed Maria a headline that would soon appear: "Philippine family sues American elite for racial discrimination and abuse, if it can establish new legal precedents." Maria smiled as she read, holding the twins who were already starting to open their eyes to the world. What Harrison celebrated as a definitive victory was just the first movement of a chess match that they didn't even know was being played. As they toasted their freedom of the problematic Philippine, an international legal storm was being carefully orchestrated by some of America's most feared lawyers, professionals who had turned whole families of arrogant racists into national examples of how prejudice can cost much more than just money. Maria was not just an immigrant fighting alone with 5,000 pity homes and 2 children. She was the daughter of a man who had knocked down corrupt on 2 continents, and now she had something in her hands that would make the Harrison never hear her name, her cross. The real war was just beginning, and they had no idea of the arsenal being pointed toward him. The first bomb exploded on a sunny Monday, when Marcus Williams and his Williams team, Chen and Rodriguez, appeared at Harrison & Associates with a federal court order. "Michael Harrison, you are being notified of a process by racial discrimination, marital psychological abuse, and parental neglect," Marcus announced, his voice echoing through the elegant office while staff stopped to observe. Michael, who was in a meeting with important customers, paled instantly. "This is ridiculous. My ex-wife is trying to extort me," he shouted, but his voice trembled. Customers exchanged uncomfortable glances when Marcus calmly opened a folder and began reproducing crystalline audios from Maria's conversations. "2 Asian babies who don't even look like me. What will the neighbors think?" Michael's own voice filled the room, followed by the cruel laugh when he said, "Now you see why I should have married someone in our own race." The silence in the office was deafening. Customers got up and left without a word. Sarah Chen, a racial discrimination expert, was simultaneously performing the second phase of the attack at the Harrison house. Margaret Harrison opened the door hoping to find a delivery, but came across an impeccably dressed Asian American woman, accompanied by 2 assistants and a cameraman. "Mrs. Margaret Harrison, I'm Sarah Chen, a lawyer specializing in civil rights. I need to discuss his recorded statements about Asian children and dillied lineage." "What recorded statements?" Margaret tried to close the door, but Sarah had already put her foot at the entrance. "Those who were made at the hospital when you said your grandchildren will never be true, Harrison, and expected that, would not come out very Eastern." The cameraman perfectly captured Margaret's expression of horror when he realized that each poisonous word had been documented. Meanwhile, on the internet, David Rodriguez had launched the third phase, a coordinated campaign on social networks exposing the Harrison family. Julia's Instagram exploded with comments after screenshots of her messages calling Maria Asian luggage and gold digger foreign became viral. Your photo celebrating Michael's freedom with the caption, "New life at more drama. Now I had 50,000 furious answers." Michael desperately tried to control the damage, calling each influential contact he knew. But when she called Mayor Winthrop, the answer was icy. "Michael, my wife was in the hospital when you made those comments about Asian babies. She recorded everything. We can no longer be associated with your family." The fourth bomb came when Roberto Cruz arrived in the United States in person, accompanied by a delegation of Philippines and international journalists. The press conference was broadcast live. "This case represents a systematic standard of racial discrimination against Philippine-American citizens that should be confronted at the highest levels of American justice." Margaret Harrison, desperate, tried a last card by calling his contacts at the field club. "Patricia, you need to help me. This Philippine is destroying our reputation." But Patricia Winthrop, the mayor's wife, answered coldly. Margaret, I was there when you said those horrible things about your own grandchildren. I can't be associated with this kind of behavior anymore. Harrison's heritage began to collapse when major corporate customers canceled mass contracts. We cannot do business with a company involved in racial discrimination scandal, said the CEO of the largest construction company in the region. In 48 hours, Harrison and Associates lost 80% of his annual revenue. Julia, realizing that the boat was sinking, tried to distance himself publicly from Michael with an Instagram statement. I never supported discriminatory comments and deeply regrets anything that may have seemed insensitive, but it was too late. Screenshots of their private messages mocking the Asian babies were already being reproduced in national news. Michael, in complete despair, tried one last approach to Maria. It appeared in her small apartment at 11 p.m., crying and pleading, Mary, please stop it. I know I made mistakes, but you're destroying my whole family. Mary welcomed him at the door, holding one of the twins, his serene expression as always. Michael, she said calmly, you told me that I was just an immigrant without resources, no connections, no power to fight the Harrison family. She paused, the baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. You were right about one thing. I really had no power to fight you, but you have completely underestimated the power of justice when it is supported by the truth and people who refuse to accept discrimination. Michael's tears were real now, but Maria continued. Every racial insult, every attempt to humiliate, every moment you tried to make me feel inferior because of my inheritance, all this is documented and will be used to ensure that other immigrant families never go through what I have been through. The following week, the fifth and most devastating bomb exploded. A federal investigation into Harrison and Associate commercial practices revealed years of systematic discrimination against employees and ethnic minority clients. The FBI found internal emails where Michael and Margaret discussed maintain the company's proper profile, avoiding hiring certain types of people. While the Harrison empire publicly collapsed under the weight of their own documented words and actions, a question hovered in the air. How had a simple Philippine to fall the fall of a family that considered themselves untouchable in high American society? The answer would reveal not only the power of well-planned justice, but also how arrogance and prejudice can become the very weapons of destruction of those who practice them. The end of this history of power, justice, and consequences was just beginning to unfold. 6 months after the legal storm that destroyed Harrison, Maria Cruz was sitting at her new office in Manhattan, overlooking Central Park. The license plate on the door, Deo Cruz International Law, Civil Rights and Discrimination. The twins, now 8 months old, played in the crib next to the mahogany table where she reviewed contracts from new customers. Mrs. De La Cruz, said his assistant, CNN is on the line. They want to confirm their participation in the program about immigrant families who have won cases of discrimination. Maria smiled, remembering the days when Michael thought she didn't understand anything about business. Now her office represented more than 200 families in cases similar to her own, and she had become the national voice of the struggle against institutional prejudice. Michael Harrison, in turn, was living in the basement of a cousin's house in Queens after his mother refused to receive him back. Harrison and Associates had completely bankrupt, sold at a judicial auction for 10% of its original value. His desperate attempts to get a job were sabotaged by the simple search for his name on Google. The first pages were full of articles on racial discrimination and marital abuse. Julia had abandoned him in the second week of the scandal, posting on Instagram a picture of her in Miami with a new boyfriend, and the caption, "Sometimes you have to cut toxic people from your life." She blocked Michael on all social networks and changed the phone number. Friends who once envied her for saving Michael from a toxic marriage now avoided her as an embarrassing memory of her own prejudiced attitudes. Margaret Harrison had become a complete outcast in Westfield's high society. The country club canceled its member, citing incompatibility with the institution's values. Patricia Winthrop and Catherine Mills, her old friends, now treated her like a stranger when they were in the supermarket. Margaret who? He became the standard answer when someone mentioned his name in the social circles she once dominated. The cruel irony came when Margaret tried to get closer to her grandchildren, sending expensive gifts and letters pleading for a chance. Maria responded with a single line. Their grandchildren are very happy without knowing people who call them non-Rarison and too Asian. They deserve to grow surrounded only with love and respect. Roberto de la Cruz flew from Manila to visit her daughter and meet her grandchildren. Seeing the prosperous office and healthy babies, he proudly said in Tagalog, "Anak, you have turned pain into power, injustice in justice, and prejudice in purpose." Maria traded to the twins in English. Grandpa said Mom is very strong. A year after the scandal, Maria was invited to give a talk at Harvard Law School about how to document and combat systematic discrimination. In the audience, students of all ethnic groups applauded when she said, "The best revenge is not to destroy your enemies, is to build a future where other people don't have to go through what you went through." Michael tried one last approach on the first anniversary of the twins appearing in Maria's office with cheap flowers. Is a speech rehearsed about second chances. Maria received him at the reception, professional and cordial. "Michael," she said calmly, "you told me that I was just an immigrant with no resources to fight your family. You were right about one thing. I really had no resources to fight you, but you completely underestimated the power of justice when she meets the right people." She continued, "Today I have a prosperous office, 2 beautiful and healthy children, and the satisfaction of knowing that I help other families not to go through what I have been through. You have—" "What exactly?" Michael came out without a word, his shoulders bent by the weight of 1 year of consequences. The twins began to take their first steps in the office, between the shelves full of overdue cases and the photos of families that Maria had helped to find justice. They grew bilingual, speaking Tagalog with their grandparents for video chamada and English with New York accent on a daily basis. When someone asked his father, Maria simply answered, "They have the whole family they need." The last time the names Harrison and her crews appeared together was in an article by Time magazine about immigrant women who changed the American justice. Maria was on the cover, holding the twins, with the headline, "From the Hospital to Harvard, as a Philippine mother redefined the fight against prejudice." The secret that had silenced the Harrison family was not just that Mary had powerful connections, was that she had something much more valuable: intelligence, patience, and understanding that true strength doesn't come from humiliating others, but from raising yourself and protecting who you love. Every racial insult they uttered became evidence. Each attempted humiliation has become fuel for its ascension. Every moment they tried to make her feel small just fed her growth. The simple Philippine they tried to break had become an unstoppable force for social change, proving that underestimating someone for origin is the most expensive mistake a person can make. Mary not only won, she turned her pain into power, her injustice into inspiration, and her history and hope for thousands of other families facing the same prejudice. The Harrison tried to destroy an immigrant woman and ended up destroying themselves. Mary has learned that true revenge is not to return the damage suffered. It is to achieve success that her enemies could never imagine, and to use this success to ensure that other people never go through the same suffering. If this story of justice and overcoming has touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that the best response to prejudice is success, and that sometimes karma needs a little help from very competent lawyers and impeccable documentation.